For me, part of the hope of the future is the young people who are being educated, who are understanding the science, who are understanding the philosophy, who are understanding the religious ethics associated with this worldview. It's a worldview, and saying, this makes sense to me. This makes sense to me. So the more we can educate people, wonder is a way of being in the world. It's not something that you're projecting. It's who you are and how you exist in the world. That's my definition of wonder.
So Carol, I did want to ask just about how you found your own way to religious naturalism and what that journey was like for you, and maybe what was at stake along the way for you, however you want to come at that question.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jeremy. One way by which I became a religious naturalist is that I'm from New England and also Chesapeake Bay, Maryland, and I've always lived near water. And where I'm at Bucknell, I live by a river, and I have another home in Rehoboth Beach where I live by the ocean. So my proximity to nature gave me this sense of awe and wonder that religious naturalists tend to highlight. And I also had a fascinating relationship with a parrot named Fern. My parrot, Fern, she lived with me for 25 years. And I had the most fascinating relationship with Fern. She just died a couple of years ago. And I learned so much from Fern. She was a feisty, orange-eyed parrot who would laugh and had the most fascinating joy of life. And in this relationship with her and my proximity to other natural processes and what was going on in the academic world, all of the things converged to make me understand the uniqueness of the religious naturalist perspective.
And I had just a couple other questions before we open it up, but I also wondered about religious naturalism's relationship to organized or institutional religious traditions. Of course, we're meeting here this evening in a Christian church. There are many traditions. I know that religious naturalism is a really good, viable option philosophically and in the academy. And there are some places that I think are suited to it in terms of religious communities of practice. I wondered if you had this sort of a general question, but about traditions that might fit well within, or traditions that may have challenges with, or thoughts on the relationship between organized religion and religious naturalist thinking.
Well, there are some religious naturalists who are Christian, and there are different models of religious naturalists. Those who are often Christian, and I forget Cole's last name, but he just wrote a book on Christian naturalism, often use God language in a naturalistic way. They see no disjunction at all between what science is and what religion affirms, or what science affirms, and their fundamental belief in the sacredness of the natural world. In the Jewish tradition, Kaplan. So there have been various people belonging to distinct religious traditions as they have historically evolved, who have embraced religious naturalists. Religious naturalist is really a worldview, it's an orientation, and you can take from it what you want. So we don't feel that we have to tell other people how you can be a religious naturalist. You take from what we consider to be some of the more philosophical convictions, scientific convictions, and go with it. What we tend to emphasize, though, is how you live your life. How do you take these principles and affirm your interconnectedness with all? Whether or not you're scientifically oriented, the fact that you all know we are interdependent is something that is not just validated by science. No one here has come to the state that they're in without the help of others, without some type of dependency on others. So it's a common sense perspective that we really need each other and we belong together. So I hope that helps a little.
It does. It helps a lot. And I was drawn to it for what a big tent it can be. And it can bring in people from religious traditions, people who do not practice in a religious tradition, but it's an orientation. But I think one of the things at stake is where we are now. So we're meeting in a church in this country, in this moment. We're at sea level. You know, we have everything happening. And one of my persistent questions is what we're doing responding to the reality of the world we live in, and in a way that's responsible and kind of attuned.
That's excellent.
Sorry, that wasn't a question. That's just a thought. But
No, I was saying that's an excellent observation. Yes.
And my final question, so think of what your questions may be, friends, and I'll bring the microphone down. My final question has to do just with cultivating a life of wonder, or if you had personal spiritual practices of a religious naturalist, or things you would recommend in terms of just attuning ourselves to the natural world and maybe stepping away from some of the patterns and habits of our culture that may alienate us from the natural world.
I would invite people to slow down and pause and take in each moment and not be so caught up into doing. And I know that's sometimes hard, but especially in a place like this where you have a lot of natural beauty, it can be easy to stop, breathe, and take in the beauty of the moment. Relax your minds, relax your brains, and take in, say you're with a family member, take in the beauty of engaging that person in a moment. You're listening to someone, take in the awesomeness that you can actually understand. It's very simple ways of understanding that we're part of this complex, amazing set of relationalities. And when we can stop, pause, and take it in, you can't help but be sort of just how we're able to do everything we can do. And I think even on those very simple levels, we are in touch with that wonder that I'm trying to get us to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would that we could all slow down. Maybe we can, though, with some effort.
Yeah.
Well, let me bring the microphone down here, and I think the way we'll do it is I'll invite you to come to the microphone with a question, or if you need a microphone brought your way, you can raise a hand, and we'll make sure that happens. If you're online, again, if you email circular@circularchurch.org, we'll do our best to get to each question.
I also invite rebuttals and critiques as well.
Thank you for being here. I'm fascinated and in awe. But I would like to ask if you believe that our capitalistic and political and media-driven society in America, specifically, is intentionally placing a barrier between us and our connectedness to the world.
Yeah. Your name, please?
Jennifer.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Yeah, I would you stay there, because I'm going to ask you a question as well.
Okay.
Have more of a dialogue. I think that one could argue that certain forms of capitalism are definitely creating alienating forms of relationality. When one thinks that capital and for oneself at the expense of others is the basic value in life, and that you think your worthiness and your value as human beings is caught up into that, that definitely creates it. But there are also what some people call social capitalism, where you understand that it's okay to be creative and to make money, but what do you do with the money? Do you share? Do you help to generate opportunities for others. So I don't want to just bash capitalism. I think that there are different ways of understanding how you understand the complexity of economics and the structures in the United States. But I would definitely suggest that the dominant ways that we have inherited the understanding of capital have been somewhat denigrative, where it's individualistic and it's not that more socially communal way of understanding our commitment to each other and our interrelatedness with each other.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and I was going to ask you, what do you think of your question?
In the context of I just retired, right? And I spent many years trying to work, right? Working and working and working. And I feel like that's the housing situation, the fact that you have to work a lot of hours in order to survive and raise your family. It seems like it could be seen as a systemic, codified way to separate us from the beauty that surrounds us.
Yes, which is why a lot of younger people are experimenting with communal intentional living, those types of communities. And many of you who have college-age students know that your adult children are coming back to live with. The economy is creating some of these, but we are inheriting years and years of this understanding of the market and especially how work becomes your basic way to survive. And it's going to take a lot to undo some of these sort of very deeply entrenched ways of understanding how we ought to live as a nation. This is one little small step in the right direction, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you, Dr. Carol White. You've given us so much to get your mind and heart around. Tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that you're suggesting that the very DNA of the universe, the way everything works, kind of implies a beloved community. And that's a wonderful, that's just wonderful. You wonder, I wonder, why that hadn't occurred to me more profoundly and more consistently in my life. If that's the way things are, and I agree, I think that's the way the things are. But going back to kind of Jeremy's question, how is this to manifest itself in institutions, in a church? Would that be the death knell? Can you make a movement of this kind of thing? I guess that's my question. It's exciting, and it's tremendously hopeful that the DNA of the universe is on your side, but it's not automatic, at least it seems in human terms. And I don't know, I guess it's an unfair question, sort of, but is this just as we individuals practice this, that you follow what I'm trying to say? I'm being completely...
Not quite. I heard the first part where you agree with the overall schemata that I
Well, can
advanced.
this be a movement?
So what's your question?
Could you have a movement around this?
Yes.
The institution, I mean, that's the way things are normally done, but that's the way things are often undone, too.
So I invite you to go to the Religious Naturalist Association link, where you see people from around the world joining in from many different persuasions. Yes, it is a movement. And not only that, I'm a college professor. My students love this. This is given, so for me, part of the hope of the future is the young people who are being educated, who are understanding the science, who are understanding the philosophy, who are understanding the religious ethics associated with this worldview. It's a worldview, and saying, this makes sense to me. This makes sense to me. So the more we can educate people, the more you can share with people, the more you can talk about. And you do have to be scientifically literate to understand. I mean, what I mean by that, just the basics of what the scientific worldview, what philosophical worldview is suggesting. We are connected. We are interconnected. I mean, I'm not making this up. This is the latest, most available, convincing, compelling knowledge coming from our sciences and our philosophical worldviews. And so let's take that and go with it. And again, you don't really have to outline all of the theoretical, just understanding that it's about understanding love as an interconnected reality and putting that into practice. Why can't we just take it like on that level? Aren't you all doing this here at Circular in Charleston? So even on that level, to me, you can be part of the movement.
Well, that to me is part of the answer. That young people that you're teaching, they're responding to this, and I can see why they would. Why would anyone not respond?
Exactly.
To this way of thinking?
Well, go spread the word.
Why? It seems like in the world, what is it about the human situation that makes some people so fearful?
You all tell me. I don't have answers. I mean, that's a fascinating question. Why is it that some people resist what is common sense? Why is it that some people want to hate? Who here can answer that? But for me, it's not trying to answer that as much as trying to address it through our actions.
Maybe I'm answering a little bit my own question. I'm thinking life and death is very much a part of this process and this relationality. It's not the end, it's just the continuing.
Yes, beautiful.
Not in the way, conventionally it's not. And maybe this misunderstanding about death is what holds us back sometimes.
Yeah, death is natural.
All right.
Yeah.
My name is Giovanni.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
And come on behind me, Joe. I'm going to introduce a question from our online viewers,
Okay.
and then kind of intersperse with on-site. And I might add, as I look up the question, in terms of institutional religion, so this is a sympathetic community, many religious naturalists and many who resonate with what's being presented here, Carol and group. And also we've started a climate working group. We have lectures like this with the philosophy that informs our practice. We have engaged youth, and many other things, regular nature walks and hikes. And it is very slow to change the culture of this place, to ground it in an earthy concern first and foremost. It's really hard work to try to get the culture to change, even when it's a sympathetic culture. So I just add that as someone with a little experience of it.
Yes, and this is why I said it's aspirational living.
Right.
It's what Sandra Hardin, I think, said, staying with the trouble.
Yeah.
Don't give up. I mean, if a former generation gave up, some of us wouldn't be here. So let's continue to work and try and do the best we can.
Amen. Amen. And this comes from Bill online. Professor White, love the Academy coming here to Circular. Gratitude for that. And could you please elaborate on the idea of honoring nature's sentience and perhaps point a way to how human beings can ethically come down from this idea of exceptionalism, of humans as the crown of creation? Yeah,
that's part of what is it Bill who asked?
Yes.
Yeah, Bill, that's what I was trying to get at by suggesting that we are not an isolated entity and part of this larger complex that we call nature. We are actually, if you understand the science, we're actually byproducts of earlier organic natural processes. So we owe our very existence to other natural processes. So we are not at the center. We are not at the center of the universe. And so in that way, we are rejecting that type of human exceptionalism that came about during the Enlightenment and during the Industrial Revolution, because earlier cultures, before people started using science against nature, were much more organic and much more in touch with the earth and the land. And many of you are coming from cultural traditions where land is important, and you cultivate a harmonious relationship with your more than human kin and the land and all. So this is a fairly recent development in human cultural evolution, and we are trying to return to it with the sophisticated understandings that we have given our forms of knowledge. So yes, we are rejecting human exceptionalism in many different forms. And one other form of it I have to emphasize, and I'll say more about this tomorrow, is the type of human exceptionalism that says some humans are better than others. And we'll be talking about that tomorrow when I talk a lot more about why United States needs religious naturalism. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Hi. My name is Jo. Thank you for being here. I feel very aligned with what you've shared with us tonight, and I'm very grateful for that, especially the relationships part, and the unfolding of like poets that just soothe my soul, and just I feel very uplifted by your shares, even your selections. I think Giovanni already touched to it before I got in the queue, but my concern is the barrier. So like what barriers are intrinsic or maybe not even intrinsic within us as to like adopting more of this framework? Like my question's around how to invite more people into this line of thinking. And my answer to my own question is like concerns about people's ability with ego and humility, and
Absolutely.
I was just wondering if like that's something you've even experienced within yourself and adopting more of this framework. Just like more key points as to kind of what that was like.
So did you have several questions? What was that last one about?
Well, I always go for the personal because I love people's stories,
Right.
but just any way in which like that's kind of been part of the work that you've done is just, like you're saying you're working with students, and maybe it's easier to work with younger people as they're still developing in a way.
Yeah.
But
Younger people have not grasped so much on earlier ideas that have been part of dominant culture. They're still exploring. They still are open to the possibility that they might not know. And when you get older, sometimes you think, I know the truth, blah, blah, blah. And I do think, though, that when you ask about my own personal convictions, I do believe love is a fundamental value in the universe. And I do believe that humans are evolutionarily equipped to love. What that means, we're equipped to embrace differences among us, within us. And why not do that? If you're in love with life, I'm in love with life. I love, exactly. And so my zeal, my desire, my passion for living, I try to enact with every person, everything that I encounter. To me, that's a simple, very simple principle. Every person you meet could be a universe that you have yet to discover. Don't go to that person with preconceived notions of who or what that person is, except that that person is stardust like you are. And why not explore? Why not open yourself up to the beautiful new ways of understanding yourself as you engage that person? So to me, even on that level, we can do this. We can do it. And no one's too old. Unless a person just doesn't want to, the person is stubborn, doesn't want to open her, himself, or themselves up to the novelty, the beauty that stands before them. So that would be my way of just talking about this in this sort of personal way. Thank you.
Hi, my name
Hi.
is Phil.
Your name is?
Philip.
Phil, okay.
Right. Thanks for coming, and I think on my last few folks, you've kind of answered my question, but I'll pose it anyway, because I think it's a good segue, it sounds like, to your comments tomorrow. I guess if you had to put it in the shortest version possible, the question would be, is wonder enough? And it sounds to me that it's not, since what we're talking about is kind of equal respect for different forms of life, and probably the hardest thing is respect for other forms of human life. That's probably an even greater barrier than respect for the natural world. Because it does seem to me that it is very possible to have a sense of wonder at nature while not feeling any particular obligation for other people to be able to enjoy. If you can afford to take advantage of nature, or maybe if you have enough money, you can live in a well-preserved, protected place. And folks without that kind of money usually can't. They're usually amidst a lot of concrete.
Absolutely.
Or a lot of natural environment that's been turned to agribusiness. So I think that's probably a segue. I think that this idea, though, I don't know what's required exactly beyond wonder. Maybe it's reverence.
Well, I do think, your name again?
Philip.
Philip. I hope you heard in my talk today that wonder is not just sentimental, whatever. It's recognizing that one is part of a biodiverse species and honoring that. So that's part of what you're getting at. So wonder is not just having this lovely intellectual or emotional response. It's recognizing that we as a species are biodiverse and we must honor and enact those principles. So I'm with you on that. And that seems to be a little faint in my presentation today, but it's a huge part. It's a huge part of it. And we all know, in terms of U.S. history, alienating forms of relationality hurt. They're painful. So there's a lot of pain that we need to address with wonder. And when I say wonder, again, I don't want you, wonder is a way of being in the world. It's not something that you're projecting. It's who you are and how you exist in the world. That's my definition of wonder. Wonder is a way of being in the world. It's opportunity you get. You should be enacting principles who you are that validate the uniqueness That's my definition of every single being you meet, whatever racial, gender, sex, class, identity that person might have. So that's part of it. I'm using it as beautiful language, but it really is a hard lesson that few people enact. So thank you.
Including a kind of painful recognition that I am doing harm to others.
Yes.
Which is not something people mostly want to do.
Yes. Thank you. And it's okay to celebrate even as we acknowledge the pain and the harm. But I meant it's not both and. We must do both. Too much, if you only focus on the negative, you'll be overcome by everything that's wrong. If you only focus on the positive, you won't acknowledge the challenges. So let's temper both, trying to keep ourselves alive and vibrant.
And I think we've got one more question from online, and then we can transition into a social time. We've got a reception outdoors. And so let me just ask this one from Scott online, and he asks, it seems that religious naturalism is similar to animism, but coming from a scientific direction rather than a traditional or indigenous cultural perspective. Can you speak to that a little?
Is this Scott?
It is Scott, yes.
Yeah, very astute observation. It's actually, animism, for those of you who don't know, is one of the earliest forms of religiosity, going way, way back, where people felt that nature was imbued with some sort of vital energy or whatever. Is one of the earliest religious ways of being in the world. And so religious naturalism returns to that basic idea that nature is vital, understanding that we're a part of it, and it is supported by scientific, and I will also add philosophical forms of knowledge to that. So yes, Scott, you're absolutely on target with that. and religious naturalism is a compelling worldview that shows the best of religious values, philosophical coherency, and scientific verification. Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate it.